Before we drift away, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more calming sleep stories. Sweet dreams await. Part 1, The Arrival. The rain had been falling since mid-afternoon, and by the time the old bus left the winding road and coughed to a halt beside the forest trail, the sky was a dull, pearled gray, neither light nor dark, just dense with clouds and mist. You stepped off alone, the driver offering a nod that said more than words. The moment your boots touched the wet gravel, the door side shut behind you, and the bus growled away into the fog. Silence followed. Only the gentle patter of rain remained, drumming on your coat hood and the surrounding leaves. Before you stood a rusted sign nailed into a crooked post. Lantern Deep Forest, no fires beyond the third hollow. The paint was old, the words half faded. The wood around it was dark with age and water. You weren't sure what drew you here, only that when you'd found the invitation, scribbled on parchment in a book you didn't remember buying, it had felt like a calling. You adjusted your pack, the rain soaking into the outer seams already, and stepped off the gravel into the woods. The trees closed in around you slowly, like they were waiting until you weren't paying attention. Thick trunks rose from damp earth, their roots crawling like veins across the moss-covered floor. Ferns waved gently in the cool breeze, and the air carried the scent of wet bark and distant smoke. A trail wound inward, not paved, but walked, as if by boots long forgotten. As you followed it deeper, the sounds of the outside world faded, replaced by the rhythm of your own breath, the tap of raindrops on leaves, and something else. A hush. Not silence. A hush. The kind that feels like something is listening. But you didn't stop. Hours passed, though the sun never broke through the clouds to prove it. Eventually, you reached a hollow beneath the roots of a bent oak, its base curved over like a sheltering roof. There, tucked into a ring of stones, was an old fire pit. The ash was cold, but not ancient. Someone had been here recently. You set down your pack and knelt beside it. A scattering of dry sticks had been stacked with care just out of the rain, shielded beneath the twisted roots. Whoever left them meant for someone to find them. Maybe they meant you. With numb fingers, you struck the flint. The spark caught quicker than it should have, licking up the side of the wood with eager hunger. Within moments, a fire was blooming, soft and golden and quiet. You sat back, warmed by it. Around you, the forest didn't stir. The trees loomed in stillness, the rain pattering softly on the leaves far above. It was like sitting inside a giant breath that never exhaled. The air shimmered slightly above the flame, and in its flicker, the mist seemed to pull back, revealing something deeper in the trees. A faint shape. A lantern. Hanging from a low branch. Unlit. You stared at it. And it stared back. Part 2, The Flicker in the Fog. The fire crackled gently at your feet, casting soft shadows against the roots of the bent oak. Beyond its amber light, the woods were quiet, unnaturally so. Not lifeless, but still. Watchful. Your gaze lingered on the unlit lantern swaying from the low branch about 30 feet away. It hadn't been there a moment ago, you were sure of that. And yet it hung there now as though it always had, gently rocking back and forth, untouched by the breeze. You rose slowly, careful not to disturb the fire too much. Its warmth clung to your back as you stepped just beyond its reach, boots sinking slightly into damp earth. The ground was soft, and your footsteps made no sound. Each breath fogged in front of your face, though the air wasn't cold enough to warrant it. You stopped within a few feet of the lantern. Up close, it was stranger. Old, certainly, but not broken. Its iron was stained with streaks of rust, and faint carvings lined the metal frame, symbols you didn't recognize. Not letters, exactly. More like pieces of music carved into a shape. It swung once, gently, then stilled as if waiting for your touch. And so you touched it. The moment your fingers brushed the cold metal, the lantern hissed softly, then came to life. A flame flickered inside without spark, without fuel. Just there, all at once, burning blue at its center, glowing orange at its edges. It cast no shadow behind it, only forward, into the forest. And in that path of firelight, you saw the next lantern. Deeper in the trees. Another faint glow. Behind you, the fire you'd lit crackled softly, still alive, still warm. A part of you considered returning to it. But something stronger, some quiet pull deep inside your chest, urged you forward. You lifted the hanging lantern gently from its branch. It was heavier than it looked, warm in your hand, like holding a heart that had just begun to beat again. Step by step, you followed its light. The second lantern glowed a little brighter as you approached. It, too, hung from a branch, dripping faint beads of rain down its handle. But as you reached for it, it didn't need to be touched. It lit itself. No sound, no spark, just that same sudden bloom of fire from within. Then, a third glow appeared in the distance. You glanced back. The trail was still there behind you, your footprints shallow in the moss. But the campfire was gone. Only darkness stood where it had been. Not even smoke. You felt your heartbeat quicken, but the lantern's warmth steadied it. Somehow, holding it made you feel okay. Like the path, though strange, wasn't wrong. You moved on. And soon, the forest changed. The trees grew closer together, their trunks bending inward. The branches arched above you like a cathedral of limbs and leaves. Rain filtered down in fine mist. The hush deepened. Then, just as the third lantern began to glow in the distance, something whispered from the underbrush. You stopped. It didn't sound threatening, just curious. Like wind curling through a keyhole. You listened. It came again. Not wind. A word. Follow. Part 3, The Third Light. You stood still in the mist, breath caught somewhere between your throat and chest. The whisper had been unmistakable. A single word, soft, and not quite human. Follow. You turned in slow circles beneath the dim canopy, lantern held low. The blue-orange flame pulsed quietly within its glass walls, casting an uneven light across the damp bark and lichen-covered trunks. No figure stood in the dark. No animal stirred. Nothing but the steady sound of rain and the hush of trees. Yet the word lingered, not in the air, but inside you. Like something planted. Ahead, the third lantern flickered softly from its perch in the distance. You stepped forward. The moss underfoot grew thicker now, plush and cool beneath your boots. With each step, the forest darkened, as though the trees were leaning closer to listen. Leaves clung wetly to your shoulders. Somewhere in the canopy, water dripped slowly, rhythmically, like the ticking of an ancient clock. When you reached the third lantern, you didn't need to touch it. It bloomed with light on your arrival, this one more vibrant than the others, casting soft rings of gold across the forest floor. Beneath it, the ground flattened into a small clearing, and in its center stood something strange. A stone basin. Half buried. Round. Weathered. Filled to the brim with water so still it mirrored the sky above. But when you peered into it, the reflection didn't match. The sky and the water was night, deep, inky black with stars you didn't recognize. No clouds. No rain. And in that sky, a shape floated. A silhouette. Not of a bird or creature, but a figure. Standing. Watching. Holding a lantern. You blinked. The reflection rippled, and the figure vanished. Just your face now. Pale and uncertain. Behind you, a new glow stirred in the trees, brighter, softer, like moonlight through fog. A fourth lantern, further away. Beckoning. You turned back toward the basin, but something else now sat beside it. A small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. It hadn't been there seconds ago. You crouched and opened it carefully. Inside, a note, written in thin, spidery ink. Light leads. Fire remembers. Do not stray. Beneath the note, a matchbook. Damp at the edges. On its cover, the same carved symbols you saw etched into the first lantern. You pocketed it. The lantern in your hand pulsed once, soft, steady. As if agreeing. Then, from somewhere deep within the trees ahead, a soft sound echoed, neither wind nor whisper. It was a melody. A faint tune, almost too distant to hear. Like someone humming. A woman's voice, low and slow, carried through the fog. The light ahead brightened slightly. You stepped toward it. Branches parted. The humming grew louder. And with it, the sense that something was waiting just beyond the next tree. Part 4, The Humming Tree. The humming was delicate at first, no more than a ripple in the rain. But as you stepped carefully through the trees, your lantern raised, the melody sharpened. It wasn't cheerful, nor mournful, it had no words, yet it carried emotion. Wistfulness. Waiting. The fourth lantern glowed ahead, hanging lower than the others, swaying gently from the crooked limb of a thin birch. Its flame, unlike the last, burned with a deeper hue, tinged red, almost like embers. It cast no light behind it, only ahead. As you approached, the trees began to change. Their bark turned pale, bone-white in some places, mottled with patches of dark moss. Some trunks leaned at odd angles. Others grew in loops, like something had twisted them as they grew. You passed beneath the fourth lantern. It flared gently in recognition. The humming stopped. Then silence. A breathless, hanging silence. And then a voice, not a whisper this time, but close, just beyond the ring of your firelight. Soft, crackling like it had spent a century asleep. You carry the first, it said. The oldest flame. You turned slowly, the lantern held outward. Nothing but trees. Mist. Rain falling in quiet threads. The voice came again, this time from the other side. It remembers paths long buried. Names long forgotten. You stepped back instinctively, but the light in your lantern pulsed, once, then again. As if, calming you. I don't know what you are, you said quietly, your voice strange in the hush, but I'm not here to disturb anything. A long pause followed. Then the air in front of you shimmered. A figure stepped out. She wasn't what you expected. Her face was hidden behind a veil of branches and lichen, her body tall and wrapped in long, patchworked cloth that moved like hanging moss. No feet touched the ground. She simply stood among the trees as if she'd grown from them. Her voice was softer now. No one comes here by accident. Not anymore. You didn't move. She tilted her head. Yet here you are, with the lantern. And the matchbook? You hesitated. I found it in the hollow. She nodded slowly. Then the forest remembers you. The mist around her coiled like smoke. In her hand, she held a lantern like yours, but hers did not burn. Its glass was cracked. Cold. I lost my fire, she said, almost gently. It's been sleeping since the others turned. Turned? She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed toward the trees behind her. There, half-shrouded in vines, stood an archway made entirely of twisted wood and hanging stones. Beyond it, the forest grew darker. Deeper. Follow the path, she said. The fire will show you what you need to see. You glanced toward the arch. Then back to her. But she was gone. Only her broken lantern remained, swaying gently from a branch. Part 5, The Arch of Vine and Stone. The broken lantern swung gently from its branch, its cracked glass catching the firelight from your own. It made no sound. It didn't glow. Just swayed, slow and solemn, like it remembered something sad. You stepped toward it. The weight of the forest seemed to shift around you. The trees leaned closer, their bark darker now, streaked with long lines of green and black. Rain filtered down in thinner threads here, and the mist felt heavier, closer to your skin. Ahead, the arch. It was woven of living things, roots, limbs, stones too smooth to be natural. The wood twisted upward in a spiral, vines wrapped around them like veins. Hanging from the top were small tokens, feathers, rusted keys, bits of cloth, tiny bones strung together with red twine. You paused at its base. A sense of pressure built in your ears, not loud, but dense, like standing just beneath the surface of deep water. The lantern pulsed once in your hand. You stepped through. The moment you crossed beneath the arch, the air changed. Not colder, not warmer, just different. Still. The scent of wet earth and old fire grew sharper, and the sound of the rain dimmed until it was barely audible, like you were inside something that only mimicked a forest. The trees here had no leaves. Their branches were bare, slick with moisture, reaching out like arms bent backward. Moss clung to their trunks in strange patterns. You noticed the faint impression of shapes in the ground, too wide to be footprints. More like hollows. As if something large had once been laid to rest here, long ago. Your lantern flared. Another lantern ahead, this one perched on a tall wooden staff stuck upright in the soil. Its flame flickered green at the edges, flickering like it was being breathed upon by something invisible. Beside it stood a cairn, an old pile of black stones, carefully stacked. At its base, another oilcloth bundle. You knelt, brushing water from its surface. Inside, a second matchbook. This one dry. A single glove. Woven. Small. And a folded slip of paper. Faded, but still legible. The trees remember names. Don't speak yours aloud. You stared at the note, your breath fogging it slightly. The glove was stiff with cold. A child's glove, maybe. No more than that. You put it back, gently, and rose. The lantern on the staff flickered again, then pointed. Not by wind, not by chance. It moved. It wanted you to follow. You did. As you walked, the trees thinned, the earth beneath you growing soft and black, like char. Occasionally, you saw something between the trunks, shapes. Hunched. Watching. But they didn't move. Statues. Shadows. You didn't ask. Your path led down a slight slope, the air thick with that green-flamed glow. Then, at the edge of a shallow hollow, the ground gave way to stone steps, carved directly into the hillside. Wet, ancient. Leading down. At the top step was carved a single symbol, the same as the one on your matchbook. Your lantern dimmed slightly, as if bracing itself. Then you descended into the dark. Part 6, Beneath the Roots. The stone steps curved gently downward, slick with moss and rain. You took them slowly, your lantern raised before you, its warm glow casting narrow shadows along the dripping walls. The passage wasn't carved in the usual sense, it felt older, as if the forest itself had opened here, growing around a secret it couldn't bury. Above, the mist faded. Below, only damp silence. Each step echoed faintly despite the softness of the moss underfoot, as though the chamber you were entering was far larger than you could yet see. A low, earthy scent filled your lungs, wet roots, old leaves, the breath of something slumbering. At the bottom, the path opened into a cavern. Not of stone, but of roots, thick and interwoven, forming a natural dome. Some hung low like curtains, others twisted around each other into massive columns. Rain dripped slowly from the ceiling, finding its way through unseen cracks high above. In the center of the space, a circle of stones. At first, it looked like a fire pit. But as you moved closer, you realized it was more than that. Etched into the stones were symbols, hundreds of them, matching the ones on your lantern and matchbook. At the very center of the circle sat a stump, its top hollowed and smooth like a basin. Inside it, a pool of rainwater rippled gently despite the still air. You raised your lantern over it. The flame danced, and the surface of the water changed. At first, it was just reflection, your face, your light. Then something else appeared. A memory. You saw a cabin. Wooden. Rain tapping on its roof. Someone sitting on its porch, maybe you. But older. Alone. Holding a book. Watching the trees. The image flickered. Then it was gone. You blinked. The water returned to stillness. Behind you, something moved. You turned fast, raising the lantern. But it was only a root. Curling gently toward you. Not threatening. Almost, offering. In its curve rested a bundle of dry twigs, laid like a gift. And beside them, a single candle. You reached forward. The moment your fingers closed around the candle, your lantern flared brightly, then dimmed to a soft blue. The flame inside calmed, and the roots around you slowly recoiled, pulling back into their places. You understood without knowing why. You were meant to carry this candle onward. You tucked it carefully into your pack, along with the twigs. The matchbook sat close to your chest, dry and waiting. As you turned to leave, you noticed something new on the far side of the chamber. A doorway. It wasn't there before. Not made of wood or stone, but of curved branches woven together, glowing faintly with bioluminescence, pale green and blue. Mist curled from beneath its arch. And beyond it, movement. Faint. But unmistakable. Something waiting. Part 7, The Hollow Gate. You approached the woven doorway in silence, the soft blue of your lantern brushing across its surface. The arch glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the distant, low beat of something you couldn't hear, but could feel. Like the forest itself was breathing. The branches forming the doorway were smooth and barkless, bleached pale by time or something older than time. They bent in impossible arcs, yet held fast together with tendrils of green light humming between them like veins. Mist clung to the threshold, cold on your shins. You stepped through. The air on the other side was warmer, denser, and darker. Gone was the sound of dripping water, the quiet rustle of the trees. Here, it was like walking into the pause between heartbeats, total stillness wrapped in earth and shadow. Your lantern dimmed. Not out of fear, but reverence. The space you'd entered was hollow. A massive underground chamber, carved not by tools or time, but by purpose. The walls were smooth and dark, curving outward like the inside of a buried bell. The ground was soft beneath your boots, layered in thick moss and fallen leaves. At the center of the space stood a tree. Or what remained of one. It was enormous, its trunk split open as if by lightning long ago, the heartwood hollowed and blackened. Limbs reached outward like the fingers of a giant, many broken, some still bearing thin, ghostly leaves that swayed with no wind. Your lantern's flame bent toward it, as if drawn. You stepped closer. Inside the cleft of the dead tree, a small pedestal had been placed. Carved from the same stone as the cairn above. Its surface was marked with the same strange music-like symbols, and in its center, a shallow depression, round and clean. The size of a candle. You felt the candle in your pack warm slightly. You reached for it. The moment your fingers touched the wax, the ground beneath you thrummed, soft and low, like a heartbeat. The light of your lantern grew steadier, brighter. You placed the candle into the hollow of the pedestal. It sat perfectly. Then, silence. And then, a sound. Not a whisper. Not a voice. A memory. The sound of fire crackling. Rain tapping on a wooden roof. The creak of an old chair on a cabin porch. And footsteps. Slow, bare footsteps on old wooden floors. Then silence again. The candle lit itself. A small, perfect flame. Its light reached up into the dead tree, climbing its hollow center, illuminating symbols carved high along the inside of the trunk, symbols you hadn't seen before. Then, with a soft groan, the chamber shifted. At the base of the tree, roots pulled back, revealing a tunnel. Low, narrow, leading deeper still. The candle stayed burning. Your lantern pulsed gently in your hand. There was only one way forward. And it led beneath the oldest tree in the forest. Part 8, The Whispering Tunnel. The roots groaned faintly as they pulled aside, revealing the dark tunnel carved beneath the hollowed tree. The sound was wet, fibrous, like something half alive was making room for you. Your breath felt shallow as you stepped toward the opening, your lantern casting soft ripples of amber light across the curved walls. The tunnel was narrow at first, forcing you to duck slightly. The walls were lined not with stone or dirt, but with a network of root veins, some smooth as polished bone, others bristling with moss and tiny silver fungi that blinked softly in the dark. As you passed, they reacted. The mushrooms flared with bioluminescence, illuminating your path like stars glimpsed through branches. And beneath that gentle light, the whispers returned. Faint. Fragmented. Familiar. The name is buried. Don't light them all. He came before you. You paused. The tunnel curved gently to the right, and the air changed again. Cooler. Wetter. The scent of ash and sap. Somewhere far ahead, water was dripping, steady and precise, like a clock with too much patience. You moved forward. The floor sloped downward, then leveled. The walls opened wider, the tunnel becoming a corridor. Here and there, objects jutted from the roots, half-swallowed relics, an old pair of glasses, a rusted compass, a single boot, a child's wooden toy missing its limbs. Each item was placed deliberately, as if left behind, or taken. At one point, you found a section of wall scratched with markings. Not symbols this time, but tallies, lines scratched in groups of 5, dozens of them, hundreds, climbing into the ceiling and trailing off into nothing. You passed them quickly. Then, up ahead, your lantern caught on something new. A mirror. Shattered. Large. Its edges embedded in the root wall, as though it had been dragged here and pressed into place. It reflected strangely in the lantern's glow, the shards twisting the light into shapes that didn't belong. Your own face fractured into a dozen uneven reflections, some smiling faintly, others blank, one or two frowning back at you. You turned your lantern away. As you did, you noticed something else beneath the mirror, a door. Not a door of wood or iron, but of bark. Woven tightly. Tall, narrow. No handle. Just a single carved symbol at its center. The same symbol from your matchbook. The flame in your lantern pulsed. You raised the matchbook. It felt warm now. Not hot. Expectant. One match. You struck it. The sound echoed unnaturally loud in the tight corridor. The flame glowed green, just for a second, then settled. You touched it to the bark. No fire spread. Instead, the symbol on the door lit up, glowing with soft gold light. The bark twisted. And the door opened. The tunnel beyond was wider. Grand. Lit by lanterns just like yours, spaced evenly along the walls. Each flame different, green, blue, white, red. None of them flickered. And at the far end, a figure. Standing. Waiting. Lantern in hand. Back turned. Still. Part 9, The Still One. The corridor beyond the bark door seemed impossibly long. Lined with lanterns that burned without sound, without flicker, without smoke. Their light was soft, almost reverent, casting long, solemn shadows against the curved root walls. Each lantern bore a different hue. Some pale as moonlight, others deep as coals. And at the far end, the figure. Motionless. Back turned to you. You hesitated at the threshold. Your own lantern pulsed gently, the flame swaying toward the corridor like a needle pulled by a magnet. It wasn't warning you this time. It was urging you on. You stepped forward. The sound of your footsteps was swallowed by the soft earth beneath. With each pace, your own flame grew dimmer, not in strength, but in attention. As if whatever presence had guided it until now had become quiet, or absent. The figure did not move. Closer now, you could see they were tall. Thin. Wearing a long coat soaked with old rain. Their lantern, held in a gloved hand at their side, burned a dull, cold blue. Their shoulders were slightly slumped. The stillness about them was so complete, you almost doubted they were alive. Then, at 10 paces away, they spoke. Without turning. Their voice was low, calm. Familiar. You're holding the seventh flame. You stopped. Silence again. Then, after a moment. Have you seen it yet? You swallowed. Seen what? He turned. The face was partly in shadow. You couldn't tell the age. Only the eyes, they looked tired. Like they'd been open for far too long. "The house," he said softly. "It always starts with the house." "I saw a cabin," you said. "In the water's reflection." A pause. He nodded. "They all do. It's a memory the forest keeps closest. When the flame wakes, it shows you that first. It's not the beginning. It's the anchor." He raised his lantern, and for a moment, the corridor behind you flickered, not with fire, but with images. You saw people. Dozens. Hundreds. All walking this same path at different times. Carrying lanterns. Looking lost. Some alone. Some together. Then gone. He lowered his lantern. The vision faded. "I was the last before you," he said. "But I went too far. Took more than I should have. Now." He looked down at the lantern in his hand. The flame inside it flickered weakly. Almost dying. "I've been waiting to give it back." He held the lantern out toward you. "You didn't take it." "Why me?" you asked. He almost smiled. But not with joy. "Because the forest doesn't choose. It remembers. You were here before. A long time ago. You just forgot." He placed the lantern on the ground between you. Then stepped back. As he did, his form began to fade. Like fog under sunlight. Before he vanished completely, he said one last thing. "The 10th flame will show you the door. But only the 11th can open it." And then he was gone. Only the lantern remained. Its blue flame flickering, uncertain. You knelt. Picked it up. It didn't go out. It joined your own light, burning beside it. 2 flames now. 2 stories. Ahead, the corridor opened into darkness. And far, far off, the sound of thunder. Deep. Rolling. Not from the sky. From beneath. Part 10, The Roots That Remember. The twin flames in your lanterns dance together now, one warm and golden, the other cool and pale blue. Side by side, they pulsed like a steady breath, casting twin shadows across the walls of the corridor ahead. You stepped beyond the place where the still one had stood. The lantern he left behind in your hands felt lighter than yours, yet colder to the touch. The flame inside shimmered as if submerged beneath water. Every few seconds, it blinked. Like it was watching. The corridor stretched forward into a vast hollow, so wide and tall the lanterns couldn't touch the far walls. Mist hovered across the floor, swirling around your boots, and above you, far in the shadows, the thick roots of trees stretched downward from a ceiling lost in gloom. They pulsed slightly. Breathing. You were inside something alive. You moved slowly through the hollow, following faint markers, carved stones set in deliberate arcs, as if outlining a path only a few had ever walked. Each stone had a symbol, and each symbol grew more complex than the last. At one point, you passed a large standing stone shaped like a wedge. Upon its side was etched a single phrase. "If it remembers you, it will try to bring you home." You paused. What did it mean, it? The forest? The deep? Or the house? Your steps carried you toward the far side of the chamber, where the mist thickened. You could see the shape of a structure now, small, square, ancient. A well. Its stones were worn smooth, slick with moss. Thick vines coiled up its side like fingers. No bucket. No rope. Only darkness inside. Your two flames flickered violently the moment you neared it. Not in warning. In recognition. You stepped forward, peering down. No bottom. Just shadow. And then, movement. A faint fluttering, like wings brushing stone. Then a voice, low and distant, rising from below like smoke curling up through a chimney. The root remembers the river remembers the fire. You stepped back instinctively. But not far. The voice faded. From behind the well, another arch rose from the ground, smaller than the last, but more deliberate. This one was built of smooth black roots, braided tightly together in an almost human shape. A shape that bowed. You approached, and this arch parted. No sound. No resistance. Just permission. You stepped through. On the other side, the forest changed. The walls closed in. No more vast chambers, no open ceilings. Just a narrow trail lined with bark that looked like stone. Your lanterns grew stronger again, flames brightening as if glad to have direction. The trail was winding now, turning back on itself like a serpent. And every so often, carved into the walls beside you, were names. Some scratched with trembling hands. Some burned into the wood. Others carved with ritual care. You paused at one, a name you almost recognized. Too faded to be clear. But the shape of it tugged at something old in your mind. Had you carved it? Had someone else? Your hand brushed the surface, and your lanterns dimmed again. Then, without warning, the wall before you shuddered. And opened. Not with light. But with memory. A cabin. Rain on the roof. The smell of firewood and wet clothes. And someone, waiting inside. Part 11, The Memory That Waited. The wall unfurled like bark soaked in time, curling inward, opening not into another root-lined corridor, but into a room. A room that should not exist here, beneath the forest, wrapped in roots and secrets. But it was real. Your boots crossed a wooden threshold, suddenly dry. The scent of the forest gave way to cedar smoke, rain-damp cloth, and something cooking slowly over embers. It was a cabin. Not a vision, not a flicker in the mirror, but whole. Still. Waiting. The inside was small and familiar, even though you were certain you had never seen it before. A fire burned gently in a hearth made of river stone. A rocking chair rested near it, draped with a heavy brown shawl. Against the far wall stood a desk cluttered with notebooks, their pages curled from dampness and time. Rain tapped on the windows, though you could see only fog beyond the glass. You stepped farther in. The twin lanterns dimmed as you entered, as though respecting the silence here. You set them on the hearth. Their flames bowed low. The cabin welcomed you. Not with sound, but with memory. The kettle on the stove was warm. The blanket on the chair still held the shape of a resting body. A candle on the windowsill had burned down to a stub. It was like someone had left, just moments ago. And then, something strange. You turned toward the desk and saw a photograph. A faded one. Curled at the corners. A forest path. Rain falling. And you. Standing in the distance, blurry, but unmistakable. You picked up the photo with a shaking hand. Behind it, a single note was pinned to the wall, handwritten in dark ink. Don't follow the trail too long. It becomes you. Below the desk, tucked in the shadows, sat a wooden box. You pulled it into the firelight. It was old, sealed with twine and wax, carved with the same symbols from your lantern and the well. When you opened it, inside were matches. Dozens. Each labeled. Each wrapped in old notes. You picked one up. The waxed paper around it read, "Match 3, the night it first came through the trees." Another. "Match 9, the candle that burned backward." Another. "Match 11, the door without a house." And then one more, lying alone at the bottom. This one had no label. But it was warm. Your fingers trembled slightly as you reached for it. Before you could lift it, the fire behind you shifted. Not the flame, but the sound. It changed. From the soft crackle of wood to the sound of breathing. You turned slowly. The rocking chair now faced you. Empty. But rocking gently. Back and forth. And back. And on the floor beneath it. Footprints. Bare. Damp. Leading to the door you entered through. Which was now closed. From behind it came the sound of something pacing. Slow. Deliberate. Then it stopped. And knocked. Once. Part 12, the knock beneath the roots. The knock echoed through the cabin like a stone dropped into still water. Just once. But it rang deep, vibrating the floorboards under your boots, rattling the cooled kettle on the stove. The fire in the hearth flinched low, cowering. Your twin lanterns dimmed in unison. And then. Nothing. No second knock. Just the creak of the rocking chair slowing. Just your breath and the hush of rain tapping faintly on the windows. You stood frozen. The door ahead looked normal, old wood, iron hinges, no lock. But the feeling behind it wasn't normal at all. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't warning. It was recognition. Like whatever was on the other side knew you. Or remembered something you had long forgotten. Your hand hovered near the latch. Another silence passed. Then a voice. Low. Gentle. And close. But not from the door. Don't open it yet. You turned sharply. No one. The cabin was unchanged. But the voice had come from inside the walls, like a memory wrapped in timber. And then, without another sound, the door opened by itself. No wind. No dramatic crack. Just a simple, quiet swing inward, revealing only darkness. A short hallway, root-lined again, but different. Sharper. Stripped of the softness you'd seen before. No glowing fungi. No carved stones. Only a tunnel. Narrow. Descending. You picked up the unlabeled match. It pulsed faintly in your hand. You pocketed it. Then took your lanterns from the hearth and stepped through the doorway. The tunnel behind the cabin closed as soon as you passed. No sound. It was colder here. More direct. And as you descended, the roots along the walls began to form shapes. At first, subtle. Faces. Figures. Twisting, half-formed images woven into the very bark. Then more clear. A lantern burning in a handless grip. A figure kneeling at a well. A cabin burning under a black sky. You walked past each. And finally, at the bottom, you found something you had not seen before. A gate. Made not of roots or stone, but of wood. Burnt, blackened, yet still standing. It was tall, arched, and bound in chains that bore no locks. Only symbols. 12 of them. Each one shaped like a match. You held your lanterns closer. Only 2 symbols glowed. 2 matches lit. 10 remained dark. But as you stared, the 3rd symbol began to shimmer faintly, warming. Expectant. You reached into your pocket, pulled out the unlabeled match, and understood. This was match 3. The next memory was waiting. But beyond this gate, not a room, not a voice, not a vision, but something far older. Something the forest itself had tried to forget. And now, it remembered you. Part 13, the night it first came through the trees. You held the match in your hand, unlabeled, save for the warmth it carried. A heat that didn't burn, but hummed. Like it recognized the gate before you. Like it had been waiting to return here. You struck it. The sound was quiet. Muted. The flame bloomed a deep, reddish gold, and for just a moment, it flickered backward, like time winding in reverse. And then, the gate opened. The chains unraveled not with clinks of metal, but soft sighs of wood loosening after long tension. The burnt plank swung inward, revealing not another tunnel, but night. A night sky overhead. A forest alive with whispers and wind. You stepped through and were no longer underground. The soil was damp underfoot, rich with pine needles and fallen leaves. Tall trees arched over you like cathedral columns, and between them, moonlight broke through in long, thin shafts. But it wasn't silent. You could hear it. A low, rising sound in the distance. Not thunder. Not rain. A humming. Deep and strange. Like stone vibrating underwater. And closer still, the rustle of branches not moved by wind, but by something moving through them. Your lantern flames shifted uneasily. You were in the memory now. A replay of the night it began. You walked, slowly, cautiously, your eyes adjusting to the cool glow of memory moonlight. The forest around you was thick, and unfamiliar paths twisted in all directions. But one trail stood out, a narrow line of crushed leaves and snapped twigs, leading deeper between the trees. You followed. The sound grew stronger. And then, up ahead, a clearing. In the middle of it, a tree. Massive. Hollow at the base. And open. Its interior was not made of wood, but of shadow. Rippling, breathing, like something seen beneath water. From within that hollow came a sound, a voice layered over itself, whispering multiple things at once. None of the words were clear. But one feeling came through. Hunger. You stepped back. And just then, you saw it. Emerging from the tree's hollow. Tall. Not quite human. Its limbs were long, bending oddly. Skin like soaked bark. No face, just a smooth, pale surface where one should have been, and a ring of soft burning eyes around the edge of its head. Eyes that flickered like candle flames caught in a storm. It didn't walk. It floated, slowly, quietly, the trees parting around it, roots pulling aside to make way. It carried nothing. But everything in the forest leaned toward it. Your lanterns dimmed. The blue one nearly went out. And then it turned, those flickering ring eyes focusing directly on you. It saw you. Even here. Even in a memory. The humming stopped. And the thing moved, fast, impossibly fast, rushing toward you like wind down a tunnel. You staggered back. The lanterns flared. And suddenly, You were back. Back at the gate. The match had gone out. Only the red glow of its memory remained in your chest. And the third symbol on the gate now glowed fully. 9 remained dark. But now, the forest was quiet again. And behind the gate, you could hear something else waking up. It had seen you. And it remembered. Part 14, The Match That Never Ends. The gate before you stood half-lit now, 3 of its 12 symbols glowing faintly, their warmth still pulsing in the wood. Your breath fogged the air as a colder draft curled up from the soil around your boots. Not a breeze. Not quite. It felt like watching. You reached into the wooden box. There it was. Match 4. Wrapped in parchment, but different from the others. No ink. No label. Just a thin coil of thread wrapped around its middle, and a single mark scratched into the wood with something sharp. Infinity. You didn't hesitate. You struck it. This time, the flame didn't burn red or gold or blue, it burned white. Silent. Pure. And as the flame caught, your vision wavered. Like the world exhaled. The gate dissolved. The forest fell away. And you were nowhere. Not dark. Not light. Just quiet. Then, a whisper. You've been here before. You looked down. You weren't standing anymore. You were sitting. In a chair. A wooden one. The same one from the cabin. Only now, you were surrounded by dozens more. All arranged in a ring. All empty. Except one. Across from you. A figure sat there. Still. Familiar. It was you. Same coat. Same lantern in hand. But the flame in their lantern wasn't burning, it was frozen, mid-flicker. Like time had caught it mid-motion and held it there. You rose slowly. The other you rose too. Moved when you moved. Watched when you watched. Not a mirror. A loop. A closed circle. Around you, the world began to reform, like bark growing in reverse. Shapes reassembled. Trees took root upward. The forest rebuilt itself, but wrong. Paths ran backward. Water flowed uphill. Rain fell like ash. And above it all, suspended in the sky like a second moon, the hollow tree. Its roots hung down like veins. And in its center, the faceless creature floated again. Watching. Unmoving. Waiting. You turned back to the ring of chairs. They were filling now. Silhouettes. Shadows. Others. Some sat gently. Some staggered in. All carried lanterns. All burned with different flames. And then one by one, they began to vanish. Puffed out. Their flames snuffed. Their chairs empty. You looked down at your own lantern. Still burning. But flickering. Hard. Trying. And then, snap. The match burned out. The light collapsed inward. And you stood once again before the gate. Match 4's symbol now glowed white. Your breath came slow. The fourth memory hadn't shown you a moment. It had shown you a trap. And your place in it. The forest didn't just remember stories. It repeated them. Over, and over. And over again. Part 15, The Fifth Flame is a Warning. You stood before the gate, the symbols flickering softly in their carved hollows. 4 lit. The others, still dark. But not dormant. Your fingers trembled slightly as you reached into the box and unwrapped the next match. Match 5. This one had a red string tied to its end, like a wick that led somewhere beyond the wood. Faint black soot marked the tip, though it had clearly never been struck. The note beneath it was written in a hurried hand. Light only when alone. Do not let it see your face. You looked around. You were alone. Mostly. You struck the match. And the flame whispered to life, long and narrow, like a blade, flickering with unnatural sharpness. The moment it caught, the 5th symbol on the gate pulsed red, and the world twisted. This time, there was no gate to pass through. You were simply there. Somewhere else. A wooden hallway. Flickering lanterns. No forest. A house. You recognized it before you remembered it. The walls creaked with memory. The air smelled of candle wax and mildew. Paintings hung on the walls, their faces scratched out. Not slashed, but erased, gently, with time or fingers or rain. You stepped carefully. Every floorboard remembered your weight. The hallway narrowed. Grew darker. At the end, a door. Slightly ajar. Behind it, a voice. Soft. Singing. But the words were wrong. Backwards. You reached for the door. The match in your hand burned lower. Then, a figure stepped into view. Not from behind the door, but from the wall. It peeled out of the wood, face first. Tall. Crooked. Its face covered by a curtain of wet hair. You froze. It paused, scenting the air. Your match flared. And its head snapped toward the light. You turned and ran. Back through the hall, through a mirror that hadn't been there before, shattering into black water, and emerged gasping into the root chamber. Back at the gate. Your match was gone. Burned out mid-run. And still, the 5th symbol glowed. A warning. You sat down. Breathing hard. Not just from the sprint. From the thing you left behind. It hadn't chased you. But it had seen you. It was in the house. And now, it knew you still carried light. You looked at the remaining matches. 7 left. 1 step closer to the center. 1 step deeper into the forest that remembers. Part 16, the 6th knows your name. You sat still for a long moment. The glow of 5 lit symbols pulsed gently from the gate before you, like a steady, ancient heartbeat. Warm, but alert. Aware. The kind of awareness that came not from eyes, but from memory itself. The forest was remembering more now. And it remembered you. Your hand hovered over the box. Match 6 was wrapped in dark parchment, tied with thin white twine. The paper was brittle. When you unwrapped it, the parchment flaked apart like dried leaves. The note underneath was short. Written in faint charcoal. It already said your name. You just didn't know it was yours. A chill traced your spine. You struck the match. It sputtered, resisting. The flame flickered green. Then black. Then settled into a soft, flickering amber, glowing like a lantern lost at sea. The world dissolved again. But this time, not all of it. Your body remained. The forest remained. But the sky, gone. Above you, only water. A thick dome of rippling, weightless water, hanging impossibly over the trees. You could see objects floating above it. Shapes. Stones. A house. A cabin. Your cabin. But upside down. Suspended above this forest. And hanging from it, barely touching the surface of the water sky, a rope. You followed it. It led to a clearing. In the center was a stone well. Different from the one you'd seen before. Older. Wider. And tied around its edge, hanging just above the blackness, dozens of name tags. Each one burned around the edges. Faded. All the same shape. All nailed into the stone lip. You stepped closer. The match in your hand flared brighter, sensing something ahead. And then you saw it. The tag at the center. The one not yet burned. Still whole. Still fresh. And it said, your name. Exactly as you remembered it. Except, it wasn't the name you had been using. It wasn't the name anyone had spoken aloud. But it was still yours. Like a name someone whispered to you in a dream, and you never forgot it. And the second you saw it, the rope above the well tightened. Pulled taut. Then something rose from the darkness below. Not a creature. Not even a voice. But a sound. A slow, syllable-heavy chant, repeating your true name, over and over, in tones that were never meant for human throats. Your flame guttered. The sky river above rippled. And from the treetops came a light. Not a lantern. Not a star. But a single, watching eye, massive, unfocused, peering from within the sky water. It blinked. And you woke. You were back at the gate. Lanterns shaking. Match burned away. 6 symbols now glowed. But your name, your true name, still echoed softly in the trees behind you. And the forest had begun to whisper it too. Part 17, Beneath the Fire, the Path Opens. 6 symbols now glowed on the gate. Half lit. Half still cold. The lanterns beside you swayed, though there was no wind. The flame inside the blue one quivered. The other, yellow gold, had begun to flicker out of rhythm, like it was warning you of something it couldn't say aloud. Your fingers moved toward the box again. Match 7 waited. This one was wrapped in waxed cloth, smooth and slick to the touch. There was no note, just a small stain where water had touched the cloth and dried in a perfect ring. You peeled it open. The match was blackened, already charred at the base, but whole. You struck it anyway. The flame burst upward in a pillar of saffron light, then narrowed like a focused beam. You looked up. And the beam pierced the earth itself. You weren't taken into a vision. You weren't drawn into the gate. Instead, the ground beneath your feet fell away. Not violently. Not like a trap. But as though it had always been meant to open at this moment. The dirt, the stone, the roots, all folded down, revealing a spiral staircase of carved wood, burning faintly with the same saffron glow as your match. You descended. And the world changed. The air here was dry. Still. No rain. No cold. No movement. Only the creak of your boots on each step and the low moan of old timber holding up something massive above you. The stairs ended at a chamber. An immense one. At its center, a fire. But it burned wrong. No heat. No smoke. Just a column of flame stretching floor to ceiling, suspended in midair, never touching the stone circle beneath it. The flame flickered in reverse, its motion unnatural. You stepped closer, and saw that inside the fire, there were paths. 3 of them, running through the blaze like trails through a forest. Each path showed a memory. The cabin, burning. The hollow tree, split open with light pouring out. A circle of chairs, all empty now, every flame gone. Your match pulsed. Not with fear, but with choice. For the first time, the match did not take you into a memory. It waited, letting you choose which memory to return to, which one to look deeper into. You reached out, and the match hissed. Not extinguished, absorbed into the fire. The saffron pillar froze, and with a sound like breathing stone, the fire peeled open, revealing a hidden stair beneath the column. It descended straight into darkness. No more images. No more flames. Just stone and root. You stepped through. Behind you, the fire sealed itself once more. And above, the gate pulsed with a 7th glow. Part 18, The Mirror Route. The stair behind the fire spiraled down for longer than it should have. Time thinned. Light narrowed. The deeper you went, the more your lanterns pulsed in uneven rhythm, like they were adjusting to a rhythm not your own. Or perhaps, remembering one they'd forgotten. When the stair finally ended, it did not do so with a landing, but with a room grown around you. You hadn't entered it. It had risen around your final step. Walls made of root and bark, twisted in ways wood doesn't naturally move. Overlapping rings of tree growth covered the ceiling. And in the very center, where the floor dipped slightly like the bottom of a bowl, a mirror. Or what looked like one. It wasn't glass. It wasn't metal. It was still water, perfectly contained, perfectly unmoving, floating without bowl or frame. Your reflection stared up at you. But it was wrong. It didn't move with you. Didn't mimic your breath. It blinked first. You leaned closer. The matchbox buzzed faintly at your side. You drew the 8th match from its sleeve. It was cool to the touch, colder than the others. Wrapped in black ribbon, no note, no symbols. You struck it. And instead of catching fire, it sank. Right through your fingers. Not falling to the floor, but down into the mirror. And your reflection swallowed it. The figure in the water smiled. Then moved. Climbed out. No splashing. No sound. It simply rose. Dripping with black water that vanished as it touched air. It looked like you, but not tired. Not worn. It had never walked through mud or stumbled over roots. It had walked a clean path. The one you never chose. The one where you turned back at the gate. The one where you left the box unopened. It carried no lantern. Its hands were empty. But its eyes shimmered like freshly struck matches. You backed away. It moved forward. No aggression. No rush. Just a kind of hunger. A quiet need to take your place. You turned. But the room had changed. No doors. No stairs. Just you. And it. The figure spoke your name. Not aloud. But inside your head. Not your name now. The name from the tag at the well. And when it said it, you felt something inside your spine shift, like your bones recognized the sound before your mind did. You held up your lanterns. Both flared. And the mirror behind the reflection shattered upward, exploding in stillness, the pieces not falling but rising, swirling like petals. A wind you didn't feel picked up, pulling the mirror self backward. And just before it vanished into the light above, it whispered, "We'll trade soon. You can't burn forever." Then it was gone. And you were alone again. The root room uncurled itself. The stairs rose beneath you. And you walked upward into the chamber of flame. Back through the column. And back to the gate. The 8th symbol burned silver now. But faintly. Like it was still deciding which of you it belonged to. Part 19, the ones who walked backward. 8 symbols burned behind you now, 8 lights in the old gate. Each one hummed with quiet memory. The 7th still glowed warm, but the 8th flickered. Like something was wrong with it. Like someone else had touched it too. You felt it. You weren't alone anymore. Not in the forest. Not in your mind. You opened the box. Match 9 was wrapped in paper so thin it had nearly disintegrated. You didn't unwrap it. It simply fell away in your palm. No note. But the matchstick itself was carved. Tiny footprints ran along its side, etched by hand. Every single print pointed the wrong direction, toward the base. You struck it. The flame bloomed backward. It didn't spread upward. It unfolded inward. A quiet tug in your stomach, like gravity slipping for just a moment. You blinked. And you were moving. Not walking. Dragged, gently, in reverse. Through forest. Through night. Through time. Back through paths you'd walked before, only, they weren't yours. Not exactly. The cabin was different now. Its roof whole. The door open. A kettle hanging above a still fire. You saw a figure. Not you. But familiar. Dressed like you were once, before the mud, before the storm. Their lantern burned steady. They walked backward too. Every step a retreat, but their eyes stared forward, unblinking. Focused. Not lost. Not afraid. Just returning. Behind them, others. All moving in the same reversed rhythm. An entire procession of those who had lit matches before you. Some wore clothes of different times. Old coats. Handmade cloaks. Some carried objects you didn't recognize. One walked backward carrying a chair. Another held a bundle of sticks tied with string and feathers. But all of them walked the same path. Back toward something behind you. You turned. At the end of the trail stood a hollow. Circular. Shallow. A bowl carved in the earth. Inside it. Ash. Charred pieces of lantern wood. And in the center. The box. Unopened. Waiting. Your match flickered. Then died. The flame retracted into the stick, like it had never burned at all. And you were back. The gate stood before you again. 9 symbols now glowed. The 9th one, deep brown, like scorched earth. You stared at the box in your hands. It felt heavier now. Like it had held all their matches too. Like every flame you struck had once belonged to someone who'd walked this path. Some had moved forward. Some had walked backward. And some had burned in place. Part 20, the 10th flame remembers the fire. You sat beneath the gate for a while. 9 symbols burning gently. And far above, the sky no longer felt so far away. The trees leaned slightly closer. The rain had quieted to a distant mist. As though the forest, too, was holding its breath for what came next. You reached into the box. Match 10 was not alone. It came wrapped in a band of cloth, thick with soot and faintly singed along the edge. When you unrolled it, it revealed a blackened patch, like it had once been part of a cloak or curtain that caught flame. A slip of parchment was tucked inside the cloth. But it was charred beyond reading. Only one thing remained clear. A handprint. Small. Human. Pressed into ash. You struck the match. And the world flared red. Not blood red. But embers, the color of coals long buried beneath ruin. Everything around you was gone. No gate. No trees. No air. You stood in the remains of something ancient and enormous. A courtyard. Open to a sky that had no stars, only faint drifting shapes like dying sparks. Ash fell from above in a steady drift. You stepped forward. Your boots didn't crunch, they sank slightly into the layer of cinders coating the stone floor. You weren't alone. Around the edges of the courtyard stood statues. Dozens. Each one tall and faceless, draped in cloaks made of solidified smoke. Some held lanterns. Some held matches. A few held only their hands, outstretched toward the center. You followed their gaze. At the center of the courtyard was a single flame. No wood. No fuel. It simply hovered there, no bigger than a candlelight. Yet everything, the ashes, the statues, the sky, seemed to revolve around it. You approached. And with every step, memories returned that didn't belong to you. A woman lighting the first match beneath a blood moon. A child whispering secrets into a lantern. A man who wept as he buried a still-burning match into the roots of a tree that no longer exists. None of them were you. But the match in your hand pulsed like they could have been. And as you reached the central flame, it reached into you. Not painfully. Not even suddenly. Just, completely. The flame didn't burn your skin. It burned through time. For a moment, you saw your own flame, far in the future. Where it would end. Where it would be buried. And something whispered. You are the memory. That someone else will strike one day. Then the courtyard vanished. The ash, the sky, the statues. Gone. You stood before the gate again. Your hands empty. But your chest felt warm. Not fire. Not comfort. Recognition. The 10th symbol flared golden, then settled into deep orange, like the final flicker of a match just before it goes out. And you realized. Each match you struck wasn't just lighting the way forward. You were lighting the way back too. For whoever came next. Part 21, the 11th was never meant to burn. The 10th symbol faded to a steady glow behind you, deep orange like the last flicker of a fire seen through closing eyes. You stared at it for a moment longer than the others. You could still feel that small hovering flame from the courtyard, somewhere deep behind your ribs. Still burning. Then, the box again. The 11th match was odd. It was the shortest of them all, only half the length of the others, almost like it had snapped once and been carefully mended. A ring of silver wire held it together in the middle. The tip was soaked, not in wax or pitch, but something else. Something soft. Faintly green. almost alive. There was no note. But the box felt colder when you held this match. You struck it. And for the first time, it didn't light. No spark. No warmth. Just a single high tone, like a breath drawn inward too sharply. Then the light around you shifted. It didn't bloom, it pulled away. You were in a forest clearing again. But the trees here were pale. Not bleached. Not dead. Just wrong. Like they'd never grown in real light. Above you, the sky was blank. No stars. No movement. Just a sheet of endless dark gray. In the center of the clearing was a large, circular mirror. This one was made of glass, but so tarnished and fogged you could barely see your shape in it. And standing on the opposite side was you. Not the reflection. Not the mirror self from before. A version of you who never struck any match at all. Still clean. Still full of wondering. But their eyes were empty of what yours had seen. And they didn't move. They watched you. As if waiting. As if knowing this moment would come. Your breath fogged the air. Their breath did not. You stepped forward. They stepped backward, in perfect reverse. Match 11 pulsed in your hand, unlit, but hot now. Almost unbearably. You raised it. And the you across the mirror raised theirs too. Except theirs was already burning. And you watched as the flame consumed them, quietly, peacefully, until they were gone. No scream. No shadow. Just a faint curl of green smoke that passed through the mirror without breaking it. Then you understood. The 11th flame was not meant to burn because it already had. Long ago. Long ahead. And the memory was only now catching up. You looked down at your match. It had turned black. Cool again. Like a story that had finished telling itself. The clearing around you folded away. The pale trees bent down. And the gate welcomed you back. The 11th symbol now glowed with the color of smoke, light and gray and trembling. And behind your teeth, you could taste something. Like an old, forgotten name. Not yours. But maybe. What you become. Part 22, The Tolling at the Hollow Tree. The gate behind you now shimmered faintly, not just with the light of the 11 glowing symbols, but with movement. The rain had returned, but slower, more deliberate, as if it was choosing when to fall. You could feel the deep hush of something approaching. Not fast. But certainly. You reached for match 12. This one was bound with twine and something harder, a ring of tree bark, shaped like a coin. There was a hole burned straight through its center. The smell of smoke clung to it, older than the storm. You touched the match to stone. It didn't strike. You tried again. Still nothing. But then, a distant sound echoed through the forest. A low, heavy chime. Not metal. Wood. Something ancient and hollow being struck once, somewhere far off. You looked up. The trees had changed again. Their trunks bent slightly inward, as though leaning to listen. Then came the second chime. Closer. And the third. Just beside your ear. The world turned dim again, not with dark but with depth. A soft golden glow now hovered ahead, through the woods. You followed it. Step by step, the path seemed to build itself beneath you, each footprint sinking into moss that hadn't been there a moment ago. And soon, you reached it. The hollow tree. You'd glimpsed it before, in one of the earlier visions. But now it was real. Towering. Split at the center, its bark peeled open like pages of a burned book. Within it, a bell. But not like any bell you'd ever seen. This one was grown, not forged. Woven from root and branch, suspended in the hollow by curled vines. Its center was not metal, but a lantern, dark and dormant. Your unlit match twitched in your hand. Then lit itself. A cold, slow flame crawled down the stick, glowing amber green, casting spiral shadows. The bell stirred. Then rang. A fourth chime, from within you. The match pulled you forward. You stepped into the tree. And the lantern ignited. Not with fire, but with memory. A surge of voices filled the hollow. A traveler asking for directions but never returning. A whisper traded for warmth beneath a dead sky. A lantern passed from child to elder, then buried in a mound of feathers. Each voice faded into the next. Not stories. Not warnings. Just echoes. All lit by the same kind of match. Your flame sputtered, not in weakness, but completion. And the hollow tree hummed. Not loudly, but as if in approval. You stepped backward. Out into the forest again. The tree had closed behind you. Your match was gone. And on your palm, burned gently into the skin. A ring. Not jewelry. But the same bark pattern as the tree. A mark. The 12th symbol blazed into light behind you. Green and gold. The color of old growth remembering flame. Part 23, The Match Without a Forest. The 12th symbol glowed behind you, pulsing gently with a greenish warmth. The mark in your palm remained, cool now, but unmistakable. A ring of bark and memory. You opened the box. Match 13 was different. Its stick wasn't made of wood at all, but of bone. Pale, porous, and cold to the touch. The sulfur at the tip was the color of dried blood. Wrapped around the match was a fragment of cloth, brittle as frost, printed with an image too faded to see, though you thought you could make out the vague shape of a tree, or maybe a tower. You hesitated. The match did not. It struck before you touched it. A spark leapt. And everything vanished. Not into darkness, but into emptiness. No trees. No gate. No ground. No sky. Only you. And a floor of glass beneath your feet, stretching in every direction. Far below that glass, a forest, upside down, its canopy reaching toward you like roots. Dead silent. Unmoving. Frozen in black and white. A strange hush pressed around your ears. You weren't standing. You were suspended, held aloft by nothing you could feel. The match burned cold and steady in your hand, casting no shadow. Then, from the forest beneath the glass, a single figure stepped upward. Not climbed. Rose. Effortlessly. Until they were standing beneath your feet, face to face with you, but upside down, on the other side of the glass. They wore your clothes. They carried your lantern. But their eyes were entirely black. No whites. No iris. Just the glint of reflection. They lifted their own match, also bone, also burning. And placed their free hand on the underside of the glass. You felt it. A pressure on your own palm. A perfect mirror touch. They opened their mouth. And the sound that came out wasn't words. It was wind. The howling of wind through dead trees. The groan of branches too burdened to bend. It rushed through you. And in it, you heard pieces of things. The forest that once was. The part of you that walked alone. The flame that should never have been found. The figure tilted their head. Their flame dimmed. And so did yours. Then they vanished. Fell backward into the forest below. But they didn't fall away. They fell into you. And suddenly you were standing on forest ground again. The gate loomed nearby. Your match had gone out. But you didn't drop it. You couldn't. It had grown into your fingers, part of your grip. The bark ring in your palm was still there. But now, beside it, a second mark. A root. Thin. Sharp. Pointing down. The 13th symbol lit up behind you, pulsing red and white, like blood caught in a reflection. And your lungs filled with the sound of a wind you hadn't noticed until now. Part 24, the clock beneath the soil. 13 symbols burned behind you now. The forest no longer felt entirely outside of you. You'd walked it. Lit it. Inhaled its shadows. Let it press itself into your skin. You were no longer a visitor. You were something else. The box was heavier when you opened it again. Match 14 had no wrapping, no inscription, no strange texture or artifact. It was the most ordinary match you'd seen so far. Plain. But beneath it was something new, a piece of stone, flat and worn, engraved with tiny, deliberate lines like a compass, but off-center, as if pointing to somewhere that wasn't north. And etched below it, if you find the ticking, bury your flame. You stared at the match. Then struck it. A muted flare. Dull orange. Almost sleepy. The light it cast didn't bloom outward, but curled low to the ground, illuminating only your feet and a narrow ring around you. That ring began to move. Not the light, but the earth itself. A slow, grinding circle of soil and roots around you began to rotate, noiselessly. And underneath the motion came a quiet tick. Not metallic. Not a clock. But something old. Mechanical roots. A ticking made from hollow logs and dripping sap and stones tapping together beneath centuries. The flame in your hand pulsed once, like a heartbeat. You crouched down and pressed your palm to the ground. It was warm. Alive. The match flared hotter. Then bent, like it was being pulled downward. You didn't resist. You dug. Your hands, your nails, your breath thick with churned dirt. The ticking grew louder. Until you struck something. Wood. Old and soft. You scraped more away. It was a box. Buried long ago. Almost identical to yours, but bound in root instead of ribbon. You opened it. Inside. Another match. Already burned. And a tiny metal pendulum, still swinging, despite there being no clock. Your own match began to go out. The ticking slowed. You placed your burned match into the old box beside the others. As you did, the pendulum stopped. Completely. And the silence that followed was deeper than any night. Like the earth had closed its eyes. You rose again. And the forest was quiet. Still. But something had changed. The air tasted faintly of rust. And time. You returned to the gate. The 14th symbol glowed. It ticked once. Then held. Bronze, like old gears that no longer turn, but still remember motion. Part 25, the flame that walks backward. The ticking was gone. But its silence lingered, like something that had been counted now waited to be answered. You turned to the box. 15. The halfway point. The match was long, twice the length of the others, and dark along the shaft, like it had once been soaked in oil and then left to dry. Its head was a deep violet, almost black, with the faintest shimmer when tilted in the light. Attached to it by a loop of thread was a sliver of glass. And inside that glass, a memory. You didn't recognize it at first. But when you held it to the light, it changed. Became clearer. It showed you, walking down a forest path. But backwards. With each step, leaves returned to branches. Rain leapt from the ground to the sky. The lantern in your hand grew brighter with each retreating moment. And you smiled. But not in a way you remembered. You struck the match. The forest inverted. The sky fell up. The earth rose backward beneath your feet. And you were no longer walking. You were being undone. Every step took you deeper into a past you didn't know was yours. Not memories, but remnants. You passed a tree where your name was once carved, now uncarved. A fire pit filled with ash that sucked its coals back into logs. A creek running uphill, whispering conversations you'd never spoken but somehow remembered. The match in your hand didn't burn. It grew. Longer. Heavier. As if fed by the moments it reversed. Then you saw it. The first gate. Not the one you knew. An older one. Half buried, rotted, strangled in vines. It was open. And within it, a small child holding an unlit lantern. Barefoot. Soaked. They looked up as you approached. Eyes wide. Familiar. You held the match out. But the child shook their head. They turned and walked away into the woods behind the gate. You followed for a moment, but your feet became heavy. Rooted. The match had stopped growing. It trembled. Then broke. Snapped in two. And the vision snapped with it. You stood at the gate again. Breathing. Your hand still clutched half a matchstick. The other half was gone. Absorbed into something older. And on the stone beside the box, a new mark had been etched. Halfway through, the way begins to fold. You turned back. The 15th symbol flared to life. A deep violet light, pulsing like a second heartbeat. And just beneath it, a sound. Footsteps. Faint. Distant. Getting closer. Part 26, the voice in the hollow rain. The 15th flame had left a strange echo behind. Not in the trees. Not in your ears. In you. You felt it with every breath now, like something had been left inside when time walked backward, a passenger that didn't belong but wouldn't leave. The forest around you darkened, though no light had changed. You opened the box. Match 16 was dripping. Not water. But something thicker. Clear, syrup-like, slow and shining. The match was wrapped in dark cloth, tied with a knot you instinctively knew not to undo. Etched into the side of the match was a spiral of text so fine it was unreadable until you tilted it just so beneath your lantern. One phrase stood out. Do not speak until it rains inside. You struck the match. Nothing. You tried again. Still nothing. Then, a droplet. Not from the sky. From the air beside you. Then another. And another. You turned your hand outward. Your palm rained. Tiny droplets formed on your skin, slid off your wrist. It was raining from within you. The match ignited. And the world turned silent. Not quiet. Soundless. Even the fire had no crackle. Only a pulse of light. You stepped forward. The trees moved apart like they were afraid to touch you. Then, you heard it. The voice. Coming not from around you, but from inside the drops as they fell. Each one whispered something different. So small. So fragile. But together, they formed a single thought. You're not the first. Your heartbeat slowed. The match flickered blue. We all walk here, once. Another drop. Another word. Some never leave. Then, the trees split. And you saw a pond. Perfectly still. No ripples. No wind. At the edge, a single stone seat. On it sat a figure. Not quite human. Shaped like one, but composed of tightly woven bark, feathers, moss, its face wrapped in dark cloth, just like the match. It didn't move. But you knew it was aware of you. The rain inside you grew stronger. Now pouring down your arms, off your shoulders, soaking the earth. The figure lifted one hand. And pointed. To the pond. You stepped forward. The match flared one last time, and as it died, you saw your reflection in the pond's surface. Not you as you are. Not you as you were. But you as you'd be. If you stayed here forever. Then it rippled. And the vision was gone. You turned back. The figure had vanished. Only the stone seat remained. Dry. As if nothing had ever sat upon it. You returned to the gate. Dripping. But the forest was dry. You were reigning alone. The 16th symbol lit with a soundless shimmer. Pale blue, like light seen through water that never touches you. And behind it, your matchbox felt heavier. Like it now carried something more than matches. Something waiting to be used. Part 27, The Ones Who Never Closed Their Eyes. The forest was wrong now. Not in any one way. But in all the small ones. The angles of the branches were slightly too wide. The moss grew in shapes that looked almost like symbols, curling into crude eyes and half-faces. The wind no longer moved around you, it circled, like it was studying you. You opened the box. Match 17 was carved. Not by human hands. Its surface bore marks, etched not with tools but with teeth. Tiny grooves and notches, like something had tried to chew it away, but stopped before the flame could be eaten. Attached to the match with a hair-thin metal wire was a tooth. Small. Almost childlike. But far too sharp. You lit it without breathing. The flame hissed. Not a burn, but a warning. And then the ground shifted. The trees pulled back. And ahead. A structure. A tall, jagged tower made entirely of bones. Some animal. Some not. Its walls woven with bark and twine, bound together by dried roots that pulsed faintly with light, like veins still trying to remember a heartbeat. At its entrance stood a row of figures. Tall. Wrapped in forest-colored robes. Their faces covered by bark masks, each carved with wide, staring eyes. None of them blinked. None of them breathed. The match's flame leaned toward them like a compass. You followed. They parted. Inside, the tower was hollow. And in the center, a well. No rope. No bucket. Just depth. And on the edge of that well, placed carefully, was a mirror. No dust. No cracks. Only stillness. You leaned in. But saw nothing. Not your face. Not light. Not even shadow. Just a faint scratching sound from within the well. And then whispers. We see the ones who burn. We see the ones who watch. We see the one who walks with fire in the hollow. You look down again. This time, the mirror didn't show you. It showed the masked figures, standing behind you, but they weren't moving. They were unblinking, yes. But now, in the reflection, they were closer. You turned. They hadn't moved. You looked again. Closer still. One stood directly behind your shoulder. You didn't turn. You whispered, "What do you want?" And in the mirror, the figure opened its mouth. So wide. Too wide. And out of it fell a match. Identical to yours. But already burnt. The mirror shattered. The tower groaned. And the figures disappeared. All that remained was your match. Still burning. But shorter now. And wet. Like it had been inside something. You stepped away from the well. The ground beneath it was already collapsing. You walked back to the gate. Behind you, the tower folded in on itself, silently. One less place for the forest to store its forgotten names. The 17th symbol lit. Bone white. Cracked through the middle. And in the matchbox now, between matches 18 and 19, lay the broken mirror's tooth. Wrapped in bark string. Still pulsing faintly. Part 28, The Buried Moonlight. 17 flames behind you now, and each one still flickered in some way, not just in memory, but in the shapes of the shadows that followed you. They weren't only behind you anymore. They were beside you. The air had taken on a faint, metallic scent. Something like blood. Something like silver. You opened the box. Match 18 was warm. Not from the fire. From within. As though it had been lit already and refused to die. The wood glowed softly from under the bark, like a coal wrapped in splinters. A thread of silver was embedded in its length. You could feel it hum, like it remembered the moon. There was no striking this match. It lit itself as you lifted it. The forest responded. All light vanished. Total black. Even your lantern died. Only the match burned. Bright white. Casting no color. Only shadow. You moved forward. And the world moved with you. Not beneath your feet. But inside your head. You were no longer in a forest. You were inside a cave. Yet the floor was moss. The ceiling, roots. You passed through chambers of stone with no source of formation, as if carved not by time or erosion, but by want. The match flickered once. And the sound returned. A heartbeat. Not yours. A deeper one. Older. It pulsed through the walls. And then you entered the main cavern. There, a pool. Still. Reflective. But this time, it reflected the moon. Even though no moon could shine here. You looked up. Nothing. Just ceiling. But in the pool, the moon hovered, full and bright and bleeding pale light. It shimmered with something beneath it. You leaned closer. There was a face under the surface. Eyes open. Staring up. Unmoving. Lips parted just slightly. As if whispering something you couldn't quite hear. Your match began to hiss. The flame turned liquid. Then dropped. Straight into the pool. You didn't mean to follow it. But you did. You reached down, into the reflection. And your hand passed through. Cold. Then colder. Then the kind of cold that feels like it remembers fire. You touched the submerged face. And its eyes moved. Just slightly. Toward yours. Then. They closed. The water lit up from within. Blinding white. When the light faded. You were back at the gate. Your lantern relit itself. The match in your hand was ash, except for the embedded thread of silver, now coiled around your finger like a ring. The 18th symbol glowed high above. A perfect circle. Pale light leaking from its center, trailing off like smoke. And in the wind, barely audible, a single whispered word. Soon. Part 29, The Gathering Beneath the Roots. The box was quiet now. No hums, no heat. But the forest wasn't. It watched. Every leaf, every knot in the wood, every patch of moss held breath, tension so tight it made the silence throb. You opened the box. Match 19 had no stick. Just the head. Resting like a seed in a nest of tangled black hair. It pulsed when you touched it. Not with light. But with feeling. Anxiety. Memory. Weight. The air pressed against your chest like a hand, gentle but firm. You didn't strike it. You swallowed it. You don't know why. But it felt right. It melted on your tongue like ash. Warm. And then you fell. Not down. Inward. Through yourself, through time, through every fire you'd ever seen. The forest vanished. There was only root. Endless root. Twisting like veins around a dark spiral staircase, carved of petrified wood and bone. You descended. Each step echoed like a breath too long held. The walls pulsed, like you were walking down the throat of something ancient and dreaming. Eventually, you reached it. A vast, circular chamber beneath the roots. There were no torches, no flames. And yet, the room glowed. Around its edges stood 19 figures. All faceless. All cloaked in fragments of the forest, moss, feather, fur, bark, stone. None moved. But you knew them. You'd met pieces of them in every match. In every whisper and pond and mask. At the center of the room, a pedestal. On it, the box. Your box. But different. Full. Unopened. Unburned. Whole. The same red ribbon. Uncut. A choice. You reached out. And all 19 figures turned toward you. Simultaneously. Still faceless. Still unmoving. But the gesture was clear. Choose. Burn the full box. Or keep your own. You looked at your hand. Still wrapped in the silver thread from the moon. Still faintly damp from the rain that came from within. You reached out. And took your box instead. The chamber darkened. The 19 figures bowed. And vanished into root. You blinked. And you were back at the gate. Still holding your worn matchbox. Inside it. Match 20 waited. The 19th symbol lit up overhead. It flickered like a dying campfire. But didn't go out. Not yet. You felt it in your teeth now. The end. Or the beginning. They weren't so different anymore. Part 30, The Fire That Remembers You. The forest had stopped moving. No wind. No insects. Even the shadows had ceased their twitching. You held the box like something sacred now. It felt heavier than when you began. Not from weight, but from memory. Match 20. The final one. It was unlike the others. The wood was blackened, but unburned. Smooth. Polished like river stone. Its head shimmered not with color, but with motion, tiny flickers like flames trapped just beneath the surface. As you lifted it, your lantern dimmed. Not from weakness, but reverence. You didn't need to strike the match. You just breathed. And it lit. Silently. Completely. The fire was neither red nor gold. It was a color you couldn't name. Like all the lights of all the other matches had folded into it. Rain light. Root light. Moonlight. Mirror light. Violet time and bone white ash. Even the color of soundless sleep. You stepped forward. But the forest didn't move. You did. You walked into flame. Not burning, not painful. But transforming. Every step pulled the match deeper into itself, until the match was no longer burning in your hand. You were burning. Not to ash. To memory. You saw them all. The quiet path by the gate. The child with the unlit lantern. The tower of bones. The pond with the buried moon. The silent figures beneath the root. The voice in the falling rain. You saw yourself, walking backwards again. But this time, you weren't alone. All your former selves walked beside you. Every version that had lit a match. Every choice. Every hesitation. Every breath that carried fire. And up ahead. The first gate. Open. Waiting. You passed through it, and the forest exhaled. The sky rippled. Rain fell upward and downward all at once. The lantern in your hand dimmed until only its outline remained. You turned one final time. And behind you, all 20 symbols had lit. Hovering in the branches like old constellations. Remembering you. Not because you finished. But because you carried each flame. One by one. Into the dark. The match burned out. But the light stayed. You closed the box. Empty now. But warm. Forever. You sat down by the gate once more. No need to pass through again. This was the ending. But not the last time. Because somewhere, not far from here, a box waits. And someone else will light the first match. And maybe, one night, that someone will be you again. The end of The Lantern Deep.